Good afternoon to Indian participants and good morning to the people joining from Berlin. I'm Dr. Rakshita. On behalf of Preventive team, I would like to welcome you all who have joined the webinar on antimicrobial resistance titled the Global AMR RD Hub, Supporting Evidence-Based Decision Making. Next slide. The initiative is part of Preventive project implemented by the consortium comprising 5 Indian universities, 4 European and 2 non-governmental organizations. The vision of the project is a future where every individual is aware of antibiotic resistance and is empowered with the right education to address the issue of antibiotic resistance. I would like to give a brief overview about the webinar. It is a known fact that the ongoing antimicrobial resistance is a serious developmental threat. The problem is multifaceted and catastrophic as it includes patients, healthcare providers, pharmaceutical industries, policymakers, veterinary sectors, and public. The coherence and comprehensive action in human, animal, plant, and environmental sectors is required in the framework of One Health approach. A successful response to AMR will address not only by the antimicrobials, but also diagnostics, vaccines, and alternatives to antibiotics for different sectors. There are multiple challenges in research and development and access to AMR-related health technologies, and there are gaps to be addressed in the current response. Next slide. From the webinar, you all will be able to know the global burden of AMR, the actions taken against the AMR, and the activities by the Global AMR RD Hub that are undertaken to combat the AMR crisis. Before beginning the session, I would like to give some technical details of the webinar. It is conducted on Zoom and directly streamed in the YouTube. The questions to the speaker need to be typed in the chat box. Please begin the question typing #prevented. We'll try to address all the questions at the end of the session and 10 minutes is kept aside for it. I repeat, please type your questions in the chat box. Also, the webinar is being conducted and recorded so that those who are not able to listen to it completely can listen to it in the official channel of Preventive YouTube channel. And also the link will be posted in the same Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn pages of the project. Next slide. We are extremely happy that we could get on board an eminent speaker who is working exclusively in the field of AMR. Dr. Lesley. Lesley is a scientific project officer at the Global AMR RD Hub, Berlin. She has over 10-year experience working in academia as a researcher and lecturer in microbial ecogenomics, applying molecular and bioinformatic techniques to tackle questions regarding the human gut microbiome in health and disease. Lesley joined the Global AMR RD Hub in February 2021, hoping to combine scientific insight with targeted action to help combat the silent pandemic of AMR. She was an observer for WHO Technical Advisory Group on R&D of antibacterial treatments, reviewer for many scientific journals. She was also a reviewer and panel member for national funding agencies such as French National Research Agency, Genomics, British Columbia. We shall begin the day's session. May I request Dr. Lesley to kindly proceed the talk. Welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to turn off my webcam. I'm having a few difficulties with connection, so that might help things, and I'll stream again. I'll share my slides now. So thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that very kind introduction as well. So yeah, thank you very much. It's really pleasure to have the opportunity to be able to tell you about the work we are doing at the Global AMR RD Hub, supporting evidence-based decision making. I think most of you are really aware that AMR continues to be one of the major global challenges of our times. It represents an ever-increasing threat to human, animal, and environmental health, and an ever-present and growing socio-economic burden. Many of you might have seen this recent study in The Lancet that estimated that in 2019, more than 1 million people around the world died from infections linked to microbes resistant to antibiotics. This means that AMR is actually now more deadly than malaria or HIV. I think what this study also showed is that although AMR is really complex, it's dynamic, it's multidisciplinary and multi-sectoral, it's all of these challenges, but it transcends geographical boundaries. And even though it transcends those boundaries, certain parts of the globe are actually, the burden is felt disproportionately, and especially in low and middle income countries, with reported rates of death attributable to resistance highest in Western Africa, followed by Eastern Africa and South Asia. So on this map here, the darker colours represent where the burden is at its highest. The financial impact is also enormous. So with AMR thought to cost in Europe alone 1.5 billion euros each year in healthcare costs and loss of productivity. Globally, this figure is expected to reach around $100 trillion by 2050. So extremely high numbers and burden that we're talking about here. It's clear that AMR, it really is a global issue. And this has been recognized at the highest political levels. And this so-called silent pandemic is not really so silent anymore. The scale of the problem requires international awareness and coordinated and concerted global efforts. There's a lot of action being taken that is really helping to progress the response to AMR, and all at different levels, from the highest governmental level to regional initiatives. But for example, the Global Leaders Group on AMR was established quite recently to strengthen global political momentum and leadership on AMR. The first meeting actually took place in November 2021. And in January, the group's 6 key priorities of work were published. I'm not going to go into them here, but really do recommend you visit their website and find out a bit more about them. It ranges from political action to surveillance and monitoring to understanding environmental pathways of transmission of antibiotic resistance genes and similar aspects. We've also seen commitment and action at the level of the European Union and G7 in the group of 7 countries in recent years to really take action against the challenge of AMR. For example, AMR featured very heavily on the agenda of the UK's G7 presidency of 2021, and it's actually culminated in the publication of a communiqué that shows an agreement between member states to strengthen action on AMR. In fact, we at the Global AMR RD Hub have been called upon to prepare a progress report on these activities this year. I'm actually working on that, not as we speak, but just this is my daily activity at the moment, getting together the activities across the G7 and giving them a status update on where we are and where we should be going from here. This year, Germany actually holds the G7 presidency, and there's been renewed commitment to address AMR, with the topic among the 3 key health priorities. And this is alongside the coronavirus pandemic and climate and health. We're also seeing action at the European Union level. France holds the presidency of the Council of the EU this year, and they are very committed to the topic of AMR. There was actually a meeting quite recently on March the 7th, a high-level ministerial conference, where they were updating the Europeans' roadmap on the fight against AMR, really in order to strengthen the EU's reach in this area. And of course, the Global AMR RD Hub was part of these deliberations. So on that note, we know that funding for AMR R&D is pivotal in the fight against AMR. research and development of new effective drugs and tools, particularly of antibiotics, are highly challenging, and they really provide little economic incentives for their development. I'm sure many of you have heard of the term the broken market when it comes to antibiotics. The result of this is that no groundbreaking new antibiotic is being brought onto the market in the last 30 years or so, and currently there's little sign of innovative breakthroughs in this pipeline. The WHO publishes a review of the antibacterial agents in clinical and preclinical development, and we show this information in our dynamic dashboard. More about that later. But overall, it shows that the pipeline is insufficient and more action is needed to really fill this pipeline and prepare us for the silent pandemic of AMR. There's actually an update coming soon, and the 2021 update that should be published by the WHO in the next months. Also, guide you to this paper that was published recently in January in Antimicrobial Agents and Chemotherapy. It's a nice review of the 2020 Antibacterial Agents in Clinical and Preclinical Development report by WHO. So action has been taken across the globe to reinvigorate R&D related to AMR, and this has really been demonstrated by a growing number of initiatives that either directly incentivize, coordinate or encourage AMR R&D. But given this urgency of the situation, there's still need to increase efforts and resources and improve collaboration across the different sectors and initiatives involved in AMR R&D. And this is where the Global AMR R&D Hub comes in. We were established following a call from G20 leaders for a new international research and development collaboration hub, and in their words, to maximize the impact of existing and new antimicrobial basic and clinical research initiatives, as well as product development. So we launched with this mandate in May 2018 with the aim to improve and enhance R&D activities and policies across the One Health spectrum. We're actually steered by a board of members, so they're from 17 different countries, plus the EU and 2 foundations. This is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. And we also have 4 observers on our board, and these are the WHO, the OIE, the OECD and the FAO. And so they really allow us to bring in this whole One Health perspective into the work that we're doing. And we really have a uniquely global setup as well that allows us to bring in the perspectives from countries across the globe. Our work is aligned across 3 strategic pillars. So the first pillar is guiding and supporting evidence-based decision-making. So what we do is collect global AMR R&D information from public and private sources across the One Health spectrum and also across the entire value chain and technology centres. And we provide analysis and of this data which allows us to make recommendations at the policy level. Our pillar 2 is enhancing collaboration and coordination. So what we really want to do is promote cross-sectoral and cross-disciplinary approaches and engage and communicate with different actors in the AMR R&D field and really foster that greater mutual understanding that they need, especially if we want to take a One Health approach to mitigating the AMR challenge. Our third pillar is promoting awareness, knowledge and visibility. And what we want to do is keep the momentum up for global AMR R&D across all sectors at high political levels. We want to advocate for increased and more sustainable investments into AMR R&D at the highest political levels. We're also advised by a stakeholder group, and these cover different sectors from academia to industry, and these are really important actors in the work that we do because they provide input to our work and offer a voice of the different needs in the field of AMR R&D, and that considers all One Health sectors. So, for example, we have health for animals as part of our industry stakeholders. From academia, we have ESCMID. From the international research funding initiatives, we have JPI AMR, which many of you will probably be familiar with, and CARB-X, which is an accelerator for new antibiotics. And of course, GARD-P. Again, many of you might be familiar with many of these initiatives, and if not, please do take the chance to look them up. We're also collaborators with many different actors in the field. So, for example, we're currently working with ICARS, which is the International Centre for Antimicrobial Resistance Solutions, to look at AMR R&D funding in low and middle income countries and whether we can look for the impacts of this funding. So this report should be out in the next few weeks. We also partner with the Power Foundation, who we know that use our dynamic dashboard, and also with STAR ADES, which is the International Research Consortium on Animal Health. And so we're looking at ways to advise and provide our input for their strategic development. So this is just to give you a bit of the team here as well, who do the day-to-day work of the hub. It's myself and our other team members, Ralph Subrak, Usha Lamashani, and Tanya Herfurth, and Nupur Arora. And together like I said, we do the day-to-day activities of the work at the Global AMR RD Hub. So one of the key activities over the last 3 years has been the development of the dynamic dashboard. And this really represents a global knowledge centre for AMR R&D. And so what we do is we collect information in 3 different galleries. So first of all is the investments gallery. This is the one in the green on the left here, where we collect information on AMR R&D funded projects. So we have information on over 12,300 projects from 216 funders worldwide, and these are worth $9 billion US, and these cover the 4 One Health sectors, so human, animal, plant, and environment. The second gallery, the clinical pipeline gallery, that's the one in the middle. And this collects information from the Pew Charitable Trust and the WHO on the current clinical products in development targeting bacterial priority pathogens. The Pew Charitable Trust will stop updating their own gallery, and it will just be the WHO information that we represent within this gallery from now on, basically. And last but not least, the one in red on the right, or orange, this is the incentives gallery, and this provides information on what initiatives are doing to actually fix the challenges of developing and accessing priority antibacterials, mostly for human health. So we try to provide information on what priorities there are, what initiatives are ongoing at the moment, and put all of this information into one space and keep this updated as much as we can. So our dynamic dashboard is used by a range of different stakeholders. So we've just had some feedback that the Global Leaders Group use our dashboard. Our data is used for articles in the Financial Times, and also a number of reports base what they say on the information that comes from our dynamic dashboard. And we also have anecdotal evidence that it's also being used by health ministries across the globe as well. So this is very reassuring that all this work that's gone into developing and maintaining this dashboard that's actually being used in the way that it's intended. So what does this dashboard look like? So if you go to our website and click on the dashboard, and then go into our investments gallery, this is the interface that you will actually see. And this interface actually helps you to explore the information we've collected on global funding for AMR R&D. But it's very important to note that we've only collected information on projects that were active on January the 1st, 2017 or later. So it doesn't mean to say they had to start on the 1st of January 2017, but we haven't got a long historical collection of information here. So what you can do is explore who is funding what and where. Which type of research is it, from basic research to policy, and where are the research organisations located, and which type of infectious agents is the research focused on. Each year we collate this information and publish a report on the global landscape for AMR R&D funding, and these are all available from our website. So I thought you actually might be interested in the breakdown of projects that we have in our dashboard across the different sectors as well, so from human, animal, environmental and plant health. And as you can see, the bulk of the projects in our dashboard are focused on human health. So approximately 90% of funding is going into human health orientated AMR R&D. We are working on incorporating more projects with a focus on the other sectors, but overall we don't expect the dominance of human health and AMR R&D funding to be affected too much. The plain fact is that most of the funding does go into the human health sector. What's really exciting though is we're going to publish a cross-sector report very soon. So this is a screenshot of our beta version of our cross-sectoral report, which you'll be able to access hopefully by the end of the month. And this allows you to explore the funding for AMR R&D projects that cover more than one sector. So these are cross-sectoral projects, so more in the One Health direction. And these represent approximately 5% of all projects and around 6% of the funding volume represented within the dashboard. So that's around $540 million US and around 660 projects that we've got represented there. So leaving the investments gallery, we now move to the clinical pipeline gallery. And this presents the latest analysis carried out by the WHO and Pew Charitable Trusts, and provides a very much a collated overview of the current antibacterial products in clinical development or recently approved, and these all target priority pathogens. And what these data show is that there are around 104 products in the pipeline. More than 2/3 are traditional antibacterial agents, so small molecule antibiotics, and 1/3 are non-traditional agents, so bacteriophages or antibodies, immunomodulating agents, and microbiome modulating agents. The majority, so around 70% of products, are still in the early stages of clinical development, so in phase 1 or phase 2 clinical trials. And what we see is that innovation really remains quite limited, with less than a quarter, so 21% of the traditional products anyway, representing a new class or having a new target. What we're in the process of doing at the moment is actually adding data on access to these different antibacterials from the Access to Medicines Foundation. So I think we've got some of the data already in our gallery, but we're updating this as an ongoing process. So last but not least, we have the incentives gallery, and this displays in an interactive format incentives being implemented globally that really aim to improve the functioning of markets and the broader R&D ecosystem. Currently, we see interesting small-scale targeted initiatives to improve efficiencies and really address some of the challenges along this development value chain, from research to approval and post-market approval, so actually getting people to buy these products. But what we see is that the collective scale and economic impetus likely still remains too weak, and this is what we're hoping we can start to see changes in the near future anyway. So based on our data within the investments gallery, we conduct a range of analysis. We do, as I've said, we do these annual analysis, but also focus reports, for example, on the development of veterinary vaccines to reduce antibiotic use, and animal health, AMR RD landscape in low and middle income countries. Again, these are all available from our website if you're interested in any of these themes. So in the last few slides, I'd just like to refer you to some of the external studies that we've conducted over the last years. And these have really allowed us to gain a bit of insight into incentivizing the development access to priority antibiotics and diagnostics. So in January of last year, so 2021, we were involved in a study conducted by EU JAMRAI, and they evaluated the question of what policymakers want in terms of incentivizing antibiotic access and innovation. We also commissioned a study on helping us to understand what tools are available to reward the development and uptake of these very much needed new antibiotics and diagnostics. And what this has allowed us to do is provide decision makers with a review of the available policy tools within pricing, reimbursement and procurement in 10 G20 countries, and provide concrete examples and suggestions for learning, leverage and implementation. Last but not least, we also wanted to understand the scale of the challenge, the required solutions, and undertook a study on this with the help of an expert advisory group. And this group was tasked with estimating the global market potential for products, so therapeutics and diagnostics, that they identified as representing some of the greatest unmet need for addressing AMR. So from these studies, we look at them collectively. Our key take-home message is that there's an astonishing mismatch between global needs and the commercial potential of the priority products, so these therapeutics and diagnostics that are needed for addressing AMR issues. We hope by highlighting this issue that we can actually mobilize the required action, both to support innovation and then really ensure that these necessary new products are accessible to those with the greatest need around the world. So yeah, just to show you, these are the different studies I'm referring to. And yeah, please have a look at our website. And if you want to know more about these, we've also got policy briefs available, which are 1 to 3 pages, that are maybe a bit easier to digest. So you may also be interested in our interview series. It's called AMR Snapshot. So this is very much communicating the issue of AMR. We see this as a very quick, so usually 10 to 20 minutes, but deep dive into the key challenges we are facing in antimicrobial resistance. We get a range of experts and invite them to share their perspectives and vision for the way forward in the field. We've just really started this, so we've had 3 interviews. Sabine Vogler from the Austrian Institute of Public Health, John Rex from AMR Solutions. Many of you might know his newsletter, and if not, you should try and subscribe to it. It's a great source of information. And Elizabeth Erlacher-Vindel from the World Organization for Animal Health, and they provided great insights either into the studies that the Hub's been involved in or into general issues in AMR as well. Our next planned interview is with Dame Sally Davis on the 3rd of May, and we'll post our interview on our YouTube channel and website as soon as that's been edited. So I think I've gone a bit over my 20 minutes. Apologies for that. I just thank you very much for your attention. And yeah, please subscribe to our newsletter and reach out to us on Twitter or LinkedIn, and feel free to contact myself or the Global AMR if you have any further questions, and happy to take questions now as well. I'll just stop sharing my screen here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that enriching information, ma'am. We'll just take up a few questions. And for sure, the viewers will look into the website for more reports and information. And let me take the first question. We always know that standard statement, funding of R&D for priority areas that are underfunded should be increased and optimized. So as per your analysis, what is the priority area you feel is underfunded, and what may be the reasons for it, and like what may be the ways to tackle it?
Yeah, that's a big question, and that's what we really try to pinpoint with our analysis. And there's no simple answer to that. What I can say is that when we've looked at our data, we see that a lot of the work that's being funded is going into basic research. So the majority of the funding is going into that. And then we see therapeutics getting a lot of funding, but we don't see much going into diagnostics. We see maybe 1 to 10% of the funding going into diagnostics. So this is maybe one area where we could see a bit more movement in, I think, based on the data that we have in our dashboard. So we'd like to move that forward a bit, because we know how much diagnostics are important to the challenge of AMR. We would also like to see more cross-sectoral work going on as well. We only have around 5% of our projects that are cross-sectoral, and around 6% of our funding going into these types of projects. So really taking a more one health approach to this would be great. So yeah, just a couple of highlights that I can bring over.
Mm-hmm. And the second question is, it's about the antimicrobial resistance in the developing or underdeveloped countries. Like, what more initiatives are there in the way to combat AMR in developing nations? Any particular initiatives?
Yeah, there's a great initiative called GARD P. That's one of our stakeholders, and they are looking at the moment how to, first of all, developing new antimicrobials, but also getting access in low and middle income countries for these antibiotics, these needed new antibiotics. They're developing with the WHO an initiative called Secure, which actually will ensure that these needed new antibiotics are accessible within these countries. So this is definitely one initiative that you should look out for: GARD P and Secure. Happy to write that in the chat, actually, if that helps.
Yes, ma'am.
But there's overall a lot of initiatives going on. It's also the Access to Medicines Foundation, which puts a lot of effort on to, they do these great report cards of pharmaceutical companies and sort of rate them in terms of how good are these companies in promoting access to low and middle income countries, and also about stewardship as well. You know, are these companies making sure that any of the medicines that they're developing, including antibiotics, have access and stewardship provisions attached to them? And that's the information that we're adding into our dynamic dashboard on the clinical pipeline. So this is another initiative that would be worth looking out for. Again, I'll put that in the chat in case you missed that.
So to summarize, like, it's more of more related to the accessibility of the medicine, right?
Well, access and stewardship are big issues. I think that's what the Lancet study really showed as well, that it's, of course, it's use. You know, the usage is a big issue. We've got to stop using antibiotics in an unregulated way. But we've also got to be developing new and innovative antibiotics and alternative to antibiotics. We've also got to have provisions for access, and access is a big issue. And in many of the countries where the burden of antimicrobial resistance is actually taking place, and this is a dual problem. It's about use and it's about access. It's not just one, and it's about stewardship of these antibiotics. So it's a complex issue, a really complex issue, which many great minds are thinking about at this moment, how to ensure that we can go ahead and have a future, a sustainable future, in terms of having new antibiotics coming to the market and making sure they're used in the correct way.
Yeah, and I hope the answers were satisfactory. And now we have reached at the end of the webinar. So I would like to thank you, Dr. Lesley, for our valuable talk. Thank you, ma'am. We would like to have you on our platform again. Thank you for all the participants. And I hope you all have enjoyed the session and did not face any technical issues. We apologize if anyone have faced it. And as I said earlier, the recorded version is also available on YouTube. So you can also subscribe to our channels. Thank you for the participation. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invite.
Thank you very much, Doc.